which we planned in order to bring people together to learn a little bit more about the community and how it functions and what the resources of the community are and how maybe we can get a few ideas how we might work a little closer together and be more aware of our neighbors and the needs and the opportunities in our community. So we're very glad you could join us this evening. There were three leaders scheduled for this evening. One has withdrawn, couldn't make it this evening. And so that leaves us with Michael and Julie. And so we're just going to go right ahead into the program and invite Michael to go ahead. We have given them each something like 15 minutes to share their program, and then they will talk and joust with each other for a little bit perhaps, and then we'll have an open discussion.
Thank you. Alrighty, so good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's actually my first time doing one of these, so it's pretty exciting. I'd like to thank Wayne and Friend Church for hosting and having this. I think it's very important. So without further ado, I'm just going to kind of get into who I am and what I do. So my name is Michael Avia, and I'm a coordinator of the Hendricks County Health Partnership. The partnership is a nonprofit grassroots organization that's based in Hendricks County, and it's kind of under the Hendricks County Health Department, which is kind of my uniform. I came here kind of after work, but so basically what we do, oh, I forgot about the slides. Is there a remote, or should I? Oh, yes, please. So maybe like two more, maybe? Okay, there we go. Yeah, so I'm going to just talk a little bit more about what the partnership is to kind of give you a background as to the kind of work that we do before we start talking about some of the problems that we are trying to solve in Hendricks County. So the partnership is essentially a network of different community members, organizations, and agencies that kind of work together with a common goal of improving health and wellness in Hendricks County. So health and wellness is kind of a very general area to combat because there's so many different dimensions of it. So the things that we're actually doing from time to time can vary quite drastically. We might be working on installing bike racks, we might be doing a health assessment. We're really all over the place. But our core mission is really to improve the lives of everyone living in Hendricks County. And so we do this through, next slide please. Through our three goals, which are to educate, advocate, and collaborate. So in our education, we focus on giving people access to information they might not have otherwise, which also includes like connecting people to resources that they might not be aware of. For advocate, there are so many different health topics and just areas in general that could definitely use some improvement, but it might be that people aren't aware of that, so we try and be advocates for those topics like mental health awareness and substance abuse prevention. And then we work to collaborate, and that one is just as it sounds. Whether it's through your everyday person or the CEO of whatever, we try to really get everybody involved to kind of do their part so that way we can improve our community. Next slide, please. So here are just some of the actual projects that we work on quite regularly, and this is where I'm going to talk about some of those problems that we try and solve in Hendricks County, because a lot of these projects kind of directly correlate to them. So every 3 years we do a community health assessment, which is essentially gathering a lot of secondary and primary data from different hospitals and different databases, and we kind of compile that for Hendricks County based on a lot of different things. So it's essentially a way of ranking our county and seeing what it is that we're exactly struggling with right now, what we're doing well with, and then when we get that data, we're able to use it to come up with new programs and find new areas that we need to address. We also have a resource guide. We produce this resource guide and we update it quite regularly. But essentially, any resource in Hendricks County, whether it be religious institutions or financial assistance, healthcare, all of those things, homelessness, housing, We have a resource guide that is compiled, and we have it organized by topic, and people can kind of go in there, and if they're looking for a specific service like mental health, like therapy or counseling, they can go in there, they can look for mental health resources, and they're able to find what they're looking for. And the unique thing about that is that they're all local to Hendricks County. It's also open, so if a psychologist decides to open up their own, I don't know what you call them. Practice, yes, thank you. I was like, firm? No, not firm. Yeah, if they try and open up their own practice, they can reach out to us and we can add it on there. So it's very customizable and very free and very specific to Hendricks County. And part of that is that we're trying to update it and improve it all the time so that people are able to get the most use out of it. And one of those features is if somebody's looking for something, but maybe they don't know what they need specifically, they might have needs and they might be able to convey those needs, but they might not know what they should search for to find the solution to those. They can give us a call or send us an email, and we'll connect them to a lot of different resources that are specifically for what they're looking for. So we have a lot of other things on here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we have a lot of health data reports. We have learning opportunities for our community members and for our community leaders at our different agencies. We offer professional trainings and public events. We also produce a lot of educational materials, and essentially I think it kind of boils down to any way that we can help, any initiative that we see, we kind of collaborate and try and make it happen. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about, oh, nope, that's a different slide. Okay, so how the partnership operates. So we have coalitions that they change every once in a while, but right now we have our Substance Abuse Task Force, which is a task force dedicated to not only advocating for the resources and trying to reduce stigma towards substance use issues, but we also try and reduce the amount of deaths and number of people that are suffering from substance use in the county. So that coalition really has a lot of different elements to it. We have a lot of law enforcement involved as well, since they're heavily involved with these kind of cases. We just recently, as of last week, started an Locksbox program, which is kind of a program to bring a life-saving medication publicly available to anyone who really needs it, to kind of prevent opioid overdose. So that was pretty neat. We also have our Mental Health and Wellness Coalition, which is, as it sounds, any subjects regarding mental health. We are here to advocate and educate on mental health issues and try and break down some of those stigmas, while at the same time doing different promotions for mental health and making sure that people know of the resources in the county that are available to them. So we really focus on Mental Health Awareness Month, which is in May. We have a lot of things that we usually have planned for May. And then September is Suicide Awareness Prevention Month. So we have a lot of things planned around then as well, like a suicide vigil and a lot of suicide discussion groups for at-risk groups in the county. So then I'll go on to the next one. So now we're going to start talking about the actual problems in Hendricks County. This one is very broad because everywhere has places that they can improve on, and then I'll kind of narrow it down to Plainfield specifically. But all of the data that I'm going to talk about here today has been taken from different health reports and health rankings. So starting off, just a little bit of a background about Hendricks County. Our population is about 170,000. We also are ranked one of the healthiest counties in Indiana, which is pretty cool. And then next slide, please. So here, I mentioned earlier that we do a community health assessment, which is essentially, seeing where we can improve and what we're doing well on. So in the things that we needed to improve in the most, access to healthcare services, drug and substance abuse, including opioids and alcohol, food insecurity, mental health, obesity and diabetes, smoking and tobacco usage, and social determinants of health were all very prioritized needs that we really needed to improve on, especially with substance abuse. Our numbers are actually quite high in that regard. While putting together the Naloxbox program, I had to do a lot of writing, so I kind of have this stuff ingrained in my brain by now. But Hendricks County is actually number 11 out of all 92, I guess it's not as ingrained as I thought. 92 counties in Indiana were number 11th at being the highest for opioid overdose deaths. So that's a pretty big deal. And in 2017, we started a downward trend. We started to get better in this. But then in 2020, I'm not sure if it's due to the pandemic or other things, but in 2020, that number actually skyrocketed, and it's been the highest it's been since 2017. So we had over 50 opioid overdose deaths in 2020 in the county, and we had 533 different events in which the EMS were called to administer naloxone because of an opioid overdose. That is a pretty big number. So we'll talk more about this on the next slide. Here are some health priorities from 2020. As you can see, we have a lot of good health outcomes. We do rank really well on health factors, length of life, and all of these different things. The thing that we start to see as you get towards the bottom is excessive drinking and alcohol-impaired driving deaths. And this specific data set didn't have some of the other areas that I've talked about, like other substances, but it does have alcohol. When it comes to alcohol, we have a problem with excessive drinking and alcohol-impaired driving deaths. It's actually pretty high for the county. So if you see there, the highest you can possibly have is 100, and for drinking we're at 69, and then for alcohol-impaired driving deaths we're at 78, which is worse than average for the U.S. average, but technically less than Marion County. Then when we look at the next page, I'm going to kind of continue more about these needs. For excessive drinking, Hendricks County's rate is 19%, while Indiana's rate is 18%, and that's the entirety of Indiana. For adult smoking rates, our rate is 16%, and Indiana's is 22%, so it's not as bad, but still not great. For those who don't have health insurance, we have a staggering rate of 7%, and the Indiana rate is 10%. And of those, 8% are adults and 7% are children. And then we also have 7% of our children living in poverty, which might not seem like much, but when you factor in that our population size is 170,000, it's actually kind of a big deal. For suicides, Hendricks County had a rate of 16 per 100,000 people, which is every year, and that's a lot. It's actually more than the Indiana rate of suicide. And then this might seem a little random, but it will connect back in, I promise. So for people that commute a long distance alone in Hendricks County, that's 43%, while Indiana's rate is 31%. And so next slide, please. And so I think one thing that you'll probably hear Julie and I talk about a lot today is how there are so many different environmental factors that kind of play into one's health, and there are so many different dimensions of health that affect somebody's well-being. So part of that is stability and poverty. So Julie's no stranger to affordable housing, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that now because it is definitely connected. The price of houses increased by 15.7% in Hendricks County in the past year, which is a lot of money. In Plainfield specifically, 63.8% of people own a house, which leaves 36.2% renting. When we look at the education attained, 32.52% have a high school degree. And then when we look at associates, bachelor's, and graduate's degree, it's about 40%. And so to get a job that pays adequately well, you have to at least have like an associate's degree. So about only 40% of our population actually has access to that. We look at the earnings by education and gender. High school graduates make about $31,000. We have some people that have done some college at $35,000, so not much higher. So basically, in Hendricks County, if you don't have a bachelor's degree or a graduate degree, it's very hard to live here, which I'm going to go back to the long commute thing. A lot of the workforce in Hendricks County as a whole, and especially in Plainfield, are people that commute here from other places. So we have a lot of people that might live in Indianapolis, and they will drive like over 40 minutes to get here to work, and then they go back home, which one, doesn't help us, but two, kind of sends the message that, Hendricks County is a place that it might be nice to live in, but it's not accessible to everyone. And then if you're a person that's living here and you can't afford it, then your quality of life is suffering because your housing is too expensive. Maybe the services here don't quite fit what you need. And we don't have a lot of low-income programs. We have some affordable housing programs, that is true. But in terms of actual services, we have like Hope Healthcare for your health insurance. And then a lot of other places might not accept Medicaid. And then if you don't have insurance at all, you're kind of out of luck. So a lot of people, whether it's because of cultural differences or language barriers or anything like that, anytime they want something in Hendricks, or anytime they want a service, even if they do live here, they can't come here to get that service. They have to go back to Marion County, which is kind of sending that message that we don't have what they need, and so they're not going to stay here. Or as a community, it kind of doesn't seem like we're working to include them. And so the last slide is just looking at the poverty rates. So this one was by race, and if we look at, so for white individuals, there's a 6.53% poverty rate. For Asian, it was 44.67%. Hispanic was 21.53%. Black was 8.5%. Other was 22.13%, and multiple was 12.11%. So there's kind of a clear disparity here in all of those percentages and what makes up the impoverished people in Hendricks County. And so kind of going back to what I said earlier about the language barrier and access to services, if 44.67% of the people in poverty in Plainfield are Asian, they're not going to have access to any services here because we don't offer those services, especially for low income, anything. So that kind of just prompts people to go outside of the county to get the help they need, which doesn't really help their problems in the long run. So that is the end of what I was going to talk about. I think I might have gone over 15 minutes. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much. Julie, you're next. Okay. And Julie is with Family Promise. So we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Michael, I was really great. Can we clap for Michael? Wasn't that really good? That was really good. That was perfect. It looked like you'd done it 1,000 times. It was perfect. It's such good information, and it's really a good overview, too, of what our community looks like right now and what's happening. I'm going to talk a little more specific about families that live in our community and the struggles that they have. My name is Julie Randall. I'm the Executive Director of Family Promise of Hendricks County. I think probably most of you have heard of our organization, but we provide housing and support services for people in our community that are struggling. Believe it or not, about 27% of people in Hendricks County can't afford to meet their basic needs. So they don't have enough money for rent, food, childcare, transportation. Each month they have to reach out to some other organization or just struggle silently to make it through the month. That's 27%. I think that's hard for us to believe. I think we look around and we think people are doing pretty okay. But the reality is not all of us are doing okay. The top 4 reasons that people in our community struggle, the first is a lack of affordable, accessible housing. By and large, that's our biggest problem. All day long, we struggle finding housing, keeping families in their homes because the housing prices are so high. The other big problem that people in our community have is that if you have a prior eviction or a criminal record or maybe even just a little bit of a shaky work history, it's really hard to find rental units. This year, Family Promise will rehouse over 100 families. So 100 households that were homeless, we will help find them homes. I think we're at 79 as of today. We have 79 families that we've rehoused so far this year. And the majority of those families are homeless because they have prior evictions, because there's not a landlord in our community that will rent to them. And the reason for that, is that, if you have an apartment unit, that's $800. you're going to get 50 applicants for one apartment. So that landlord gets to be really choosy about who they pick to live in their units. And if they're not going to pick somebody who has maybe a criminal record, or somebody who has substance use disorder, or a prior eviction, or 6 kids. So those people are pretty much squeezed out of the housing market, and those are the families that we serve. It's hard. I mean, it's the hardest part of our work at Family Promise. But what we do is we work with landlords that we know and believe in our work, and they're the ones that rent to our families. We have MOUs with our landlords basically saying, if you'll rent to our families, we will in turn guarantee their rent for the year. And they'll receive all the stability services that Family Promise has to offer. And that's how desperate we've become. I mean, 10 years ago, we would have never dreamt of doing that, of putting our neck out that far for a family. But if we didn't do that, our homelessness in our community would be out of control. And so we just took a gamble and say, we're just going to try this. And the reality is we don't have to pay a lot of rent. We usually pay the first month's rent and the deposit, and then maybe during that year a couple other months that they need the help to get through. But the reality is we put them in homes they can afford, and we make sure they have all the stability services they need to stay stable. And in turn, for those landlords, if they have other units with other tenants that aren't with Family Promise and they struggle or get behind in their rent, Family Promise helps keep those families in their homes too. So the landlords really appreciate that. We have a really nice landlord. His name's Larry Powers. He has apartments there across from the park. Do you know Larry? Yeah. What are those apartments called, Chase? The parks? No, I don't know. They're the individual Parkview. Yeah, Parkview. They're like 2-story townhouses.
It's the one on the corner of Stanley and right on the corner of Stanley.
Valley View. Yes, Valley View. So Larry Powers owns that. And anytime there's a unit that becomes empty there, he calls us. We pay for the rehab of the unit. So we'll pay for the carpet, we'll pay for the paint, we'll do all of that just so that we get that unit. And then he agrees to keep it affordable for us. We just had one of the things that we work really hard is to deal with the most vulnerable, obviously, in our community. We had a dad and his wife and 2 kids. The dad called us. He was in work release. He had gotten arrested for possession of drugs and had been through rehab and doing really great. And he did wonderful in work release. But he's like, my wife and my kids are homeless right now. I'm sitting in work release doing the best I can, paying for their hotel. But I'm going to be out in a few weeks. I don't know what we're going to do. And so they became part of our program. As soon as he was released from work release, the whole family joined our emergency shelter program. And she also has a substance use disorder. And so they both had criminal records, and they were both in recovery and had prior evictions. I mean, this little family of 4 had no chance in our community without an organization like Family Promise and without Larry Powers. So at the same time, we had a townhouse there that was, we were remodeling, and we went to Larry. We said, Larry, we need you to take a chance on this family. They're worth it. They're working hard. They're both working, out all the hours they can, taking really good care of their children. They're both doing really well with recovery. Will you take a chance? Larry said, yeah, I'll try. So they've been there 3 months now, paid their rent on time, doing wonderful. And again, it's because they're the heroes in all of this, these landlords, because without them, we truly wouldn't be able to do the work that we are. And I can give you story after story after story of the community working together to help these people that are struggling so much. And they're the heroes in all of it. So the biggest barrier in our community is those people who need housing that just can't afford it. Our second big barrier is a lack of affordable, accessible childcare. So everybody wants to work, right? Like our single moms, they want nothing more than be able to work and take care of their families. But without childcare, they just can't. If they're working a $15 an hour job, there's no childcare in Hendricks County that they're going to be able to afford. and so they continue to struggle. They continue to be unstable. And so about 3 years ago, we were like, we're ineffective. We have all these families in our emergency shelter program, and they're here for months and months and months because they can't afford childcare. And the state has a program called CCDF, and it's a child care credit program. So basically, if you're low income, you can have free child care. You get vouchers, and you can take them to a lot of different daycares will accept them. The problem is it takes months, sometimes a year and a half, to be able to get those vouchers, and then it's really hard to find available child care space that will take those vouchers. And so or not take the vouchers, just that there's empty seats in a daycare to even take the kiddos. And so we're like, we just can't do this anymore. Like, we have to have a real solution to this. So we partnered with St. Mark's Episcopal Church, and 3 years ago started a child care, an early learning center at St. Mark's. And so right now we have 46 seats in our child care center. All of our homeless families get to have free child care. So like the family that I just talked about, both of their children had free child care until they were stable enough to pay for it themselves. And it's the only affordable child care center in the whole entire county. We also have Head Start, which is also affordable, but this is the only private daycare that we have, early childhood learning center that we have. And so our homeless families, they get free child care, and then anybody else is on a sliding scale. So if they pay what they can afford, basically. And then we have full tuition kids too, but again, the full tuition is still affordable. I'm really happy to announce that last week we were just awarded a $100,000 grant from the state of Indiana to expand that child care. They're so excited. There was 93 applications, and they only chose 11 over the entire state, and they chose our program. So we're really, really proud for that. So we're expanding that child care center to 65 to 70 seats. We're remodeling more at St. Mark's, and then we have plans. We're working really hard right now with the town of Plainfield to build a 10,000 square foot child care center in the industrial park to meet the needs of the people that are there. You have to do all these things. You're like, I thought she was going to talk about homelessness. Well, you can't fix any of that if you don't have the stability services that they need to end that struggle. And so that's what we do. The third biggest barrier, Chase is passing me a note. Chase. Oh, I can't read it without my glasses. Oh, okay, I will. Okay. All right. And then the third biggest barrier that we have is living wage jobs. So we have jobs all over the place. Everywhere you go, there's a Hope Wanted sign. Unfortunately, a lot of those jobs, as Michael talked about, you can't work and be able to afford to live in our community. So what we do at Family Promise is we try and skip over the low-hanging fruit jobs and really work with our families to find employment that they can actually live on in our community. If we can keep the housing prices low, help with other things, and make sure they're learning enough in their jobs, they have a much better chance for success. The fourth biggest barrier is our last big barrier, and that is a lack of public transportation. So I've been a social worker in Hendricks County. Okay, I know I'm not this old, but I really am, for 24 years. Yeah, I've been a social worker here for 24 years. I started as a probation officer in Hendricks County. I worked for Judge Comer. I'm sure some of you know Judge Comer. She's been my mentor my entire life. I love her dearly. And so I worked as a probation officer for her straight out of college with a degree in social work, and I can just tell you I wasn't doing really well as a probation officer. I called her she called me into her office, and she's like, Julie, it's just not working out. They come in, I give them urine screens, and they'd be positive for meth or cocaine, and I'd be like, just try not to do that next month. I just couldn't put people in jail. I just couldn't do it. So it was fine. So at the time, we were starting a domestic violence shelter in Hendricks County that there was a big need for a shelter. And so she was talking to me about a church in in Brownsburg called Cornerstone Christian Church that had an interest in starting a domestic violence shelter, and that maybe I wanted to go work for them as their first executive director. So that's what I did. So in 1998, I founded Sheltering Wings Center for Women in Danville. I was the only employee for about 3 years and raised all the money and secured the land and built that shelter in Danville. I did that for a number of years until I started having children, and then I just couldn't balance having children and running a program like that. But my point of all of that was that 23 years ago, as a social worker, we struggled with the same problem of a lack of public transportation. And this whole time that my probationers couldn't make it to their appointments because they didn't have a car, at the same time my domestic violence survivors couldn't go work because they didn't have a car. We've all been talking and waiting for this grand public transportation to hit Hendricks County. Guess what, folks? We're not getting public transportation in Hendricks County. It's not going to happen, and we've wasted a lot of years and a lot of time waiting for something that wasn't never going to happen. And so what we do in Hendricks County now is we create other solutions. We're not waiting anymore for that to happen. I hope it does someday, but we can't wait. And we have some things. We have Link Hendricks County, and we have the connector, but basically what it does is it brings people, like Michael talked about, it brings people from Marion County to Hendricks County to work. It basically runs between Brownsburg and between Plainfield and Whitestown in the industrial parks up and down that area, and it brings people out from in Marion County. We bring in 20,000 people every day to Hendricks County to work. 20,000 people come to Hendricks County every day to work. Guess what they can't do in Hendricks County? Live in Hendricks County. Right? So they can come here and work, and they can fill our warehouses and give us all the money we need to have these great industrial parks. But the reality is they can't afford to live here. And so that's a big struggle. So back to my transportation. So at Family Promise, we created a program called Vehicles for Success. And basically what we do is threefold. The first is we accept donated cars, which is great. So we give away about 5 to 10 cars every single month to struggling families. We've realized that the real way to end the struggle for public transportation is to make sure that everybody can drive. So we give them cars when they're available. The second thing we do is reinstate their driver's licenses. So the one thing you don't have when you're poor often is a valid driver's license. Either you never had one to begin with, or you've been pulled over so many times for driving while suspended, or driving without insurance or whatnot, and you never pay your bills, and so it keeps getting suspended. And so we help people get their license reinstated, so get them legal on the roads. This is another tidbit fact that Indiana has the second highest rate in the nation of drivers without driver's license. Second in the nation. And the reason is we suspend license for everything. If you don't pay your child support, you don't get your driver's license. All of these kind of things keep people from being able to drive. And if you can't drive, you can't work, and the struggle continues and continues and continues. So again, we help people get their license reinstated. And then we do a car repair program. So we help families and individuals repair their vehicles. We have a deal with Big O Tire in Brownsburg and Plainfield. If you ever need your cars fixed, that's the place to go. They give us $1,000 of free repairs every month, and then everything after that costs. And so we're able to repair lots of people's cars. So our whole mission is to make sure that people can drive and have vehicles that are running. And for us, that's become our solution to the public transportation struggles that we have. So we know if we fix those 4 problems, housing, transportation, jobs, and childcare, that families in our community can be stable. Hands down, that is the reason for our success. And one of the biggest ways that we can do that is we can prevent their homelessness from ever occurring. So at Family Promise, we also prevent homelessness. So while we'll rehouse 100 families this year, we'll prevent homelessness for over 600 families. So that means we provide rent assistance and all of those stability services that I talked about to keep people, to keep families from losing their homes. It's a really big part of our work. And the third big part of our work, so we have our emergency shelter program, our permanent housing program, and then we have our stability and our homelessness prevention, which I just talked about, and our stability services. And that's a big, broad group of things that we provide. It's the things like our vehicle success program. It's like our child care center. It's like all of the support programs. I mean, we support people from work boots to homes. There's really not a need at Family Promise that we don't meet. And we really believe that that's what it takes. You know, for so long, you know, we put Band-Aids on problems. We thought, oh, we'll pay your rent this month, or oh, we'll help you get Medicaid, or oh, we'll help you do these things. The reality is everything has to be done. All of those things need to happen at the same time if we really want stability to occur. So we espouse the philosophy that we don't refer families out to services. We bring the services to our families. And that's made a huge difference for what we're able to provide in our community. We receive around 25 crisis calls a day at Family Promise for people that are struggling all across the community. Plainfield, by far, is about 60% of the families that we serve, or the people we serve, are from Plainfield. We're located here. You know, we have 2 resource centers. We have a resource center right across the road on North Vine Street, and then we have another resource center located in Brownsburg. And these are the hubs in our community for people who are struggling. So anybody who has a need, we pride ourselves on that knock on our door, call us on the phone. You'll find us in your apartment complexes. You'll find us at the food pantry. You'll find us where you are, too. And we'll meet whatever that need is, or we'll find a way to end that struggle for families. It's really important. Before I stop and Michael and I can talk a little bit about questions, I want to talk about the 2 things that are hardest to fix in our community. So when we were talking about what our program tonight, it was kind of the unmet, unseen needs. And the 2 biggest struggles that people have, hands down, are addiction and mental health. Those are the 2 areas that are the very, very hardest for us to fix. And it's also really difficult for our community to keep our attention on them. And the biggest reason is that they're hard to fix. You know, you're experiencing addiction one day, your recovery is not full the next day. It's a continuum. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes relapses. It takes people who are willing to stay with you even through that struggle. I could tell a little story about my good friend John, and Chase's good friend too. And he overdosed on heroin. My directions are bad. Where's 40? That right there, yeah. So he was across the road right from here, and overdosed in an apartment just right across the road on heroin. And the people he was using with just picked up his body and just threw him out on the sidewalk. And they called EMS, fortunately. EMS had to come really very quickly. They got there. Narcan, which we talked about, that we have those on our front porch now, is a reversal medication for heroin overdose. So EMS had to give him 3 canisters of Narcan, which is a lot, to halfway revive him. And then they got him to the hospital, and then they had to intravenously give him another reversal medication to bring him back. John's been a lifetime addict. You know, there's not been a time in his life that he hasn't struggled with his addiction. And the key to his success right now is that nobody gives up on him. We still try, we still work, we still encourage, we still love, even when it's hard to love, even when he gets his car stolen because he let his dealer borrow it, or even when he can't hold a job, and even when he takes things that don't belong to him. We still love him, and we still know that stability and sobriety and recovery are part of his path. He's been with us for over 1.5 years now, and I'm really happy to say he's now in his own apartment with a job and a car, and he's in recovery. He hasn't used in 7 months. But he's probably going to use again, you know, and we'll still be there to support and help him through that path. And as a community, we have to do the same thing. While we may not have a John in our life that we're going to go to the ER and sit with him in the ER for 6 hours while he recovers, as a community, we have to be that invested in in the sobriety of our community. We have to be that invested in the people that are struggling with addiction. It takes us to get down close to it and stay there and not be scared and walk back away from it, to say that this is a problem that we can solve. It isn't too big of a problem, and stay focused on creating solutions and believe that recovery matters and it can work, and it may not look like you want it to look, but it still can happen. And I say the same for our people that are struggling with mental health. It's hard. It's so hard. There is no magic pill. There is no magic path. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes staying close to that problem. And so as a community, I really encourage us to do that. You know, we can fix a lot of problems. I can find homes for people. I can make sure they're fed. I can make sure they have cars. I can't fix mental health and I can't fix addiction without the whole community rallying behind that and believing in the success that these families and these people can have through that process. So I'm going to leave you on that note, to let you know that our community is fighting hard for all of the vulnerable, all the people that are marginalized in our community. I talk a lot about loving at Family Promise, and that's what we do. We love. And it's really easy for me to love Chase because, you know what, Chase is just like me. He acts like me. He talks like me. Well, I'm not going to claim all the same characteristics. No, there is a ton of truth in that. Chase and I have similar lives. It's easy to love Chase. It is really, really hard to love people that don't look like you, talk like you, believe the same things that you do. It's really hard to love those people, but that's what we do at Family Promise. We love way out on those edges where it is so hard to love somebody because it's hard. It's hard to love somebody that's so different and feels so hard to love, but we love them anyway. And I want to encourage all of us to find a way to love way out on those edges where it's hard, because that's where the real true transformation takes place. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
And if it's okay with you, if you'd like to come, I'd like to hear you push one another a little bit.
Oh, you want to push me?
Sure.
I think we can give 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. Well, yeah, and even if maybe if you want to ask a question and we can kind of discuss it, I don't.
Would you rather just go to open meeting?
Yeah, that's fine. I think probably people have questions and we can give good answers.
Then I think I'll just let them hold the mic. Are there questions that you would like to raise with them tonight?
Yeah.
Julie, I know we talked months ago about some of the problems that we didn't feel like that the new behavioral hospital was helping. Have you seen an improvement there at all, either one of you, for accepting the mentally ill and the addictions that we're seeing?
Not yet, but I know they're talking a lot about it. I mean, they're at least listening to us now. So we thought that this new behavioral health was going to kind of be our savior in our community because we struggle with that so much. You know, we take people to Eskenazi and, you know, that wasn't appropriate and they wouldn't always take all of our people that needed it. And so we really wanted that to be the place that we could take people who were in distress, you know, who were who were experiencing addiction that needed rehab, people who were experiencing chronic mental health or having a breakdown. We thought that could be our place. And right now they're still working through that. So hopefully soon.
It's just so disappointing.
It's so disappointing.
You know, having lived here all my life, and I'm like, that's what you are supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why don't they have the resources to do that? They're part of Hinders Community Health, is that correct?
Sort of. They're their own organization, but they're partners in some capacity with Hendricks. Yeah, I don't know if you know a whole lot about it, but I think the struggle is what a lot of people struggle is. We need somebody in our community to own mental health. We need somebody in our community to own substance use disorder. And right now we don't have that. Instead, we have a lot of organizations that want to do their part but don't want to own it. And so until we have a leader in our community that wants to own that, it's going to continue to be a struggle. You know, what they are doing is they keep pushing it back out to us. And we're like, no, we need you to own that. We need you to own that. And so we're really encouraging that, and I've seen some progress. I've at least seen them give lip service. At least they're listening a little bit more. But I really hope that it changes because we need it so much. We need it so much.
But if there's any way that you think that
Yeah, I agree completely.
Michael, how does your department fit into that?
Yeah, so at the health department, we don't deal with substance use directly. We do have a couple of programs like the naloxone box, and we also do naloxone training for all of our organizations that request it or in just community members. But as a representative of the partnership and being a part of the substance abuse task force, there are a lot of meetings going on right now between different agencies, especially we have one that just started not too long ago between our behavioral health and mental health institutions. And part of the thing that we keep seeing in the community is this reoccurring problem of people falling off the map after they've been referred somewhere. So whether it's social workers, what's people at different agencies, like health agencies, that will find somebody with a need and be like, well, we don't do that here, but we can send you there. And then said person goes there, and then they're either turned away or they give a call, they didn't get a call back. It complicates things. There's a lot of those people that keep falling off the map and they don't ever get the help they need because either they don't know where to go, or it just takes one agency to not pick up the phone or not give them a call back, and then they kind of stop there. So likewise with mental health and behavioral health, that is a problem that we keep seeing of people being referred somewhere, but then there's no process of tracking that referral, and it just completely falls off. So I will say that we're definitely in some of these meetings that we've both been in. There's been a lot of talk of improving the communication between providers in the county, not just with each other, but with patients, and kind of making an open, transparent system. So I would also like to remain hopeful that this new behavioral health center works out, but I think it's not going to just take the behavioral health center, it's going to take all of us working together to kind of solve this issue.
It suggested that you might repeat the questions because they may not be hearing when the... but I'd like to ask, are you suggesting that Julie, representing Family Promise, is a hands-on, and you're from the health department is more facilitating these groups that are out in the community? Is that what you're...
Yeah, I would say so. Whether it's so the question was in regards to the new behavioral health institution that was built here in Plainfield, the Hendricks Regional Behavioral Health, and so I guess to kind of summarize a long problem, this new big facility came in. Everybody in the community was very excited about it because we thought it was going to be a solution to a long-lasting problem of people either falling off the map or not getting the help that they need, and a lot of outpatient and inpatient centers maybe not being adequate enough or being full. So we thought this will be a kind of like a game changer to the community. But there was a long period of time after they got started in which a lot of people were turned away after going there. And well, I think Julie definitely interacted with that way more than I did with your clients. But it was just something that I heard about. But a lot of people were turned away. They didn't get the help that they needed. A lot of complications fell through. There was a lot of talks of like people calling and never being able to get a hold of someone. And so I think a lot of people thought that was kind of just disappointing as a whole. So that was kind of what we were talking about of we're trying to, as a community and as community leaders, get together and kind of talk through these issues and talk through that process flow of what needs to improve.
Another question?
Go ahead.
Yes, Sally?
Yeah,
Maybe I could take... Oh. Right up there.
Okay.
Good.
I think 12-step program should be brought up because a lot of people find help there. But what does a 74-year-old woman who has her own car and has time, what can she do to help you guys?
Yeah, no kidding. I can keep you busy all day long. Right now we're delivering Thanksgiving meals to people. Seriously though, it's really what you have a heart for. So, 12-step meetings are so important, and we encourage them. We would love to be able, our goal at Family Promise, so we really believe in harm reduction at Family Promise, which is why we have Narcan on our front porch for anybody to get any time that they want. But another part of all of that for us is we want to be a continual source so that you don't have to go look for a meeting in the community. You can know that there's always one available at Family Promise. So our hope is to have an open groups there 7 days a week. 7 days a week. We're there 7 days a week. We can do that if it's possible. We have that a lot with our domestic violence survivors. We have a lot of that with all of the clients that we work with. So we have 3 really big grants right now. A domestic violence grant for people who've experienced domestic violence, one for people with substance use disorder, one for people who are formerly incarcerated, and and another grant for people who have chronic mental health. Those groups of people need the support of other people in order to get through the struggles that they're having. It's just that simple. It's too hard to do by yourself, and they're asking for that. They want that in a group setting. So we're hopeful that we're going to be able to offer that. And please talk to me about coming to join the work that we do. I mean, especially if you're drawn to recovery. I mean, we have people, we need coaches to work with our parents, and our parents that are struggling. I have a dad right now that lives just right across the road with 2 young children, a daughter and a son, and he's in recovery, and his wife was just killed 4 months ago. They've both been part of our program for many years. He needs someone in his life to help, to encourage, to support, to love him and his children. He's desperate for that. So there's lots of opportunities like that that people really need.
Okay, is there another question?
Thank you. Hi, I'm new to Hendricks County, and so thank you for coming and sharing all that information. I wanted to know about Family Promise, and I didn't know about the other thing either, so thank you for sharing all that information. I didn't know if Hendricks County had any family recovery courts. Like if they had something like drug court or any family recovery courts like that. Do you know if there's anything like that?
More about that.
That was one of my questions.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. We have one drug court in Hendricks County. So yeah, and the gist of that is as long as you complete rehab and are active in your recovery, then you don't have jail time. They're okay, but most people aren't successful. Yeah. Yeah, that is wonderful. And we're sort of there. We're just not there enough. What happened to Hendricks County many years ago is that we just didn't think we needed social services in our community. We referred everything to Indianapolis. And so it's taken us a long time to build up our social services, to actually deal with the problems that we're experiencing. I mean, to have an overdose rate of 11th in the state is a big deal. There's something we're not doing right here. And a big part of that is that we're not addressing the problem the way we need to. We don't have an intervention approach. It's a referral approach. And when you have that approach, people get lost in the referral process and they just don't get the help they need. So our drug court is good. I mean, that's good that we have one. We don't have any batterers intervention programs in Hendricks County. Again, we refer those to Marion County. We have really good services for survivors of domestic violence, but there's just so much more work as a community we need to do.
And so does something like either one of your services has hotline? For example, I was at Walmart the other night and there was a woman, it was nighttime and it was cold, and she was pushing a shopping cart, and she knocked on my window and asked me for help and wanted to know if there's anywhere she could stay. I don't know anything about anywhere here, and I didn't even know what to tell her or who to call. Is there a number to call? I don't know where shelters are or anything. Like,
So
I didn't even know what to tell her.
yeah.
where to
It was
go.
probably Becky. Was her name Becky?
It was in Brownsburg.
It was in Brownsburg. Yeah. So that is hard. That is. Oh, that's so wonderful. Yes, that is so wonderful. We are really fortunate that a lot of our homelessness you don't see. Like most of the time you don't see that. And the reason is like they need to be referred to Family Promise immediately. So I'm going to give you a stack of my resource cards, and you're going to keep them with you. And the next time that happens, you're going to have a card and somewhere to call. And all of our law enforcement in Hendricks County, this is kind of iffy because sometimes people don't want law enforcement involved. They may have an active warrant, or they might have had bad experience with law enforcement before. But right now in Hendricks County, any law enforcement that encounter anyone who's homeless in our community, we have deals with 3 different hotels in Hendricks County, and they take them directly to those hotels. And then either we deal with them that day or the next morning. We work with them to get them where they need to be. So we don't want anybody to be homeless anytime. Yeah, we'll put them in a hotel because we don't have an emergency shelter. Our emergency shelter is a hotel program at this point. So that's where we put them. So yeah, wow, what an experience for you to have. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Another question.
Just one thing. Are your numbers, do they include the people in the state prison?
No,
They're not part of your population statistics.
No, they're not part of our population in Hendricks County. Yeah, you're right, because we do have a large prison population, at least that passes through.
I think we can take time for another question or two.
I live here in Hendricks County, but I work in Marion County at Gleaners Food Bank, and very heartened to hear that of the top 4 things that were your biggest challenges and biggest barriers for folks who live here was not food insecurity. I know it came up on Michael's list, but it wasn't one of the top 4. And if you don't know, our county is very well connected with food pantries and places for people to get help here. Outside of Marion County, Gleaners serves 21 counties. Hendricks is the second largest county that has food pantries located all over. We have 17 that partnered with us. There's probably more than that. The next closest is probably, I don't even know which county outside of Marion County. I mean, Hendricks, the rest of them are all in single digits in our rural counties. So there's a stellar job being done by the food pantries in this area, and they have a food pantry coalition. One of the things that we're working on at Gleaners is kind of the holistic approach. We don't want to make sure that the person is fed. We want to make sure that they have everything they need to be a whole, happy, healthy person. So kind of working hand in hand with the things that the stability, all of those extra resources that people need. So I guess a question for Michael is, do you know in your resource guide, do you have all of the pantries listed as well? Is that one of the resources that is listed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad you brought that up. I keep in touch and I attend the Food Pantry Coalition meetings quite often. And I have to definitely agree. We have so many different food pantries in the county, several in each town. And so getting connected is always very easy. And I know that from what they've said, people really enjoy the food that they eat there too. So that's always a plus. But yeah, in our resource guide, since we always communicate with them, I get their emails, they get mine. We always update whether it's their services or their times or their procedures, because, with COVID, some things changed, some dropped, some kept going. But yeah, our resource guide really has any kind of need that you're looking for. It will be on there, including the food pantry. And so I kind of want to go back to your question earlier about the hotline. Well, we don't technically have a hotline at the partnership because we or at the government building. Between hours of 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. while I'm there, I do answer any of the phone calls that I get about the resource guide. So we have a lot of cards, which I probably should have brought with me now that I'm thinking about it. But if you just type in Hendricks County Resource Guide on Google, it'll be like the first thing you see. It'll have it all listed by topic, and there's also a phone number there that you can use to call. So if you do encounter somebody that's having a specific problem, either if it's in Julie's realm of homelessness or anything of that degree, you can give her a call. If it's anything else, you can also feel free to give me a call, and I can make sure that person gets connected to where they need to be.
And real quickly, thank you to Gleaners, because a majority of our food pantries are supported by Gleaners, and it's an amazing partnership for us. I mean, I've seen us grow in that area through all of these years, and we truly are meeting that need. We always say, I get churches, we have something called the Stability Builders Network. We have 30 different churches that are part of this, and this church is part of it too. And they're always looking for new ways to help the community, and what we always say is, we don't need any more food pantries. Like, we got it. We have that. And other things that have helped too is that SNAP, which is our Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, food stamps, it has increased, especially during COVID, and so families are able to have more food. They're able to get more food at the store because there is more support available in that program. But a lot of families do rely on the food pantries, and they're a great resource for our community. And thank you to Gleaners too.
Thank you. Is there another question? If you had one, any others? Okay, we'll go ahead.
Okay. Salvation Army is a real asset in Marion County. I used to do volunteer work there. Do they ever reach out to Hendricks County, or are they solely Marion County?
Yeah, they're just Marion County. So we refer some people there. So sometimes when we have people that need services from Marion County, we'll refer them there. So the majority of families we serve, or people we serve, are from Hendricks County, but some are actually from Marion County that call us. So we do use them as a referral source at times.
But you don't have any, like, church-related groups or whatever that, like Salvation Army is basically a religious institution that does all kinds of social work. You don't have anything like that.
We have a couple of things on a much smaller scale that's a religious organization. So I will say Hope Healthcare is definitely a great place that you can volunteer. So they're our only low-income healthcare facility in Hendricks County out of the entire county. So people without insurance can actually go there and get treated. And they do all kinds of things from regular checkups to screenings to certain operations, and they even have some like mental health and counseling services, but they're always looking for volunteers to help out with different things. So I would definitely consider Hope Healthcare.
Hope Healthcare.
Mm-hmm. And then alternatively, we also have our Hendricks County MRC, which isn't religiously affiliated or anything, but it is very similar to the Salvation Army. So it's essentially just a massive group of volunteers that's kind of under the health department that really helps out with anything that the community needs. It's very, very broad, so you can kind of pick what you want to do. So during COVID, we had some people that would go out and buy groceries for people and take it to their house. We had some people that would help at our COVID clinics. We had people that would help with just all kinds of things. So the Hendricks County MRC is really a very expansive group that I would recommend if you're just looking to get involved in the county.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, one quick one.
This is not a question, but we can't overlook the Hendricks County Senior Center. And boy, the resources and knowledge those folks have for us elderly people just blows my mind. So keep them in your thoughts, prayers, and also referrals.
Yeah, we utilize the senior center, and they utilize the heck out of us. So right now, the emergency, thank you, EAP, which is an energy assistance program that helps people of all types of people, especially seniors, pay their utility bills. during the winter and all year round. So we partner with the Senior Center on that, and they refer all of their seniors to us to help them with those applications and make sure that they don't lose their power during the winter time. And in turn, we refer our people there too that need the extra help that the Senior Center provides.
Okay, thank you so much. Our concern here when we planned this series is, particularly this evening, is there are unseen, unmet needs that we're not really aware of. And so one of the things we're trying to do is to help us become more aware of those, and we thank you for your part in that, and giving some life and hope, and some handles maybe.
Yeah.
But we need the handles. We need to know how we can plug in and provide the kind of support and encouragement and direction that we might work together to meet some of these unaware needs that we are not really aware of.
Yeah.
Because they're not really staring us in the face.
Right. But now you know, so now you have to do something about it.
Thank you so much for coming this evening.
And thank you, Julie and Mike, too.
Absolutely. Sure, let's give them a hand. For both of you. It's been very, very helpful, and we really appreciate your coming. The eighth of our series, the eighth and final of our series, will be on December the 14th, and it will not be anything nearly as lively, well, lively in a different way, because it will be a piano organ Christmas music concert here in this room. And so we invite you back at that time and share with your friends and neighbors. Many of the community Christmas programs have been canceled, particularly those related to the high school. And so we're glad that we can offer that Christmas music for Christmas time to you and your neighbors. Any other comment before we go? Well then, thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.